The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened with unusual urgency. Representatives from 47 species filled the massive crystalline amphitheater on Nexus Prime, their various forms creating a tapestry of colors, shapes, and sizes that would have been breathtaking under different circumstances. Today, however, the atmosphere crackled with tension thick enough to cut with a plasma blade. Ambassador Zethkar of the Hegemony rose from his serpentine coils, his four eyes gleaming with satisfaction. The reptilian being's scale shifted from deep purple to a victorious gold as he addressed the assembly. Esteemed colleagues, we gather today to address the growing concern that is the human species. A collective murmur rippled through the chamber. The humans had only been part of the galactic community for 37 standard years, yet their rapid expansion and technological advancement had already begun to unsettle many of the established powers. What had started as curiosity about these bipedal mammals from the third planet of an unremarkable yellow star had evolved into something approaching fear. The data speaks for itself, Zethkar continued, activating a holographic display that filled the center of the amphitheater. Charts and graphs materialized, showing human population growth, territorial expansion, and technological development. In less than 4 decades, they have established colonies on 17 worlds, developed breakthrough technologies in 14 different fields, and their military capabilities have grown exponentially. High Counselor Miralyn of the Ethereal Collective, a being of pure energy contained within a crystalline shell, pulsed with concern. Their adaptability is unprecedented. They survive on worlds that would kill most of our species without environmental suits. Ice worlds, desert planets, high radiation systems, nothing seems to deter them. That's precisely the problem, interjected General Korth of the Martial Alliance, his cybernetic implants whirring as he processed combat data. They don't just survive, they thrive. Their warriors show no fear of death, and their scientists never accept impossible as an answer. They're dangerous. Ambassador Sarah Chen of Earth sat quietly in the human delegation section, her dark eyes moving from speaker to speaker. As the sole human representative on the council, she had grown accustomed to being discussed as if she weren't present. Her diplomatic training kept her expression neutral, but inside, she felt the familiar sting of being treated as a specimen rather than an equal. Furthermore, Zethkar's voice rose, commanding attention. Their cultural exports are contaminating our youth. Human music, literature, and entertainment are spreading across the galaxy like a virus. Our young people are abandoning traditional values in favor of human concepts like rock and roll and extreme sports. Counselor Vexhai of the Academic Assembly nodded vigorously, his massive brain case pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. Their philosophy is equally troubling. They speak of individual rights, personal freedom, and the pursuit of happiness as if these concepts should supersede collective harmony and social order. And their reproduction rate, added Matriarch Unsha of the Fertility Caste, her egg sacs quivering with distress. They breed like fungal spores. At current rates, they'll outnumber the 3 largest species combined within 2 centuries. Ambassador Chen finally stood, her movement causing several nearby delegates to instinctively step back. Even after decades of contact, many species still found human unpredictability unsettling. Honored counselors, she began, her voice carrying the measured tone of seasoned diplomacy. I must point out that every concern raised today could be framed as a strength rather than a threat. Strength? Zethkar's laugh was a hissing sound that made several smaller species shudder. Your people are barely out of their technological infancy. You've mastered faster than light travel for less than half a century. Most species require millennia to achieve what you've done in decades. Perhaps that should tell you something about human potential rather than human danger, Chen replied calmly. We've brought new perspectives, innovative solutions, and cultural diversity to the galactic community. Our scientists have contributed to breakthrough technologies that benefit all species. Your species is too aggressive, General Korth stated flatly. You haven't fought a major war in your recorded galactic history, yet you maintain the largest military relative to your population size. Why do you need such forces if your intentions are peaceful? Chen's jaw tightened slightly. Because we've learned from our history. We prefer to be prepared and never need our defenses than to need them and be unprepared. Every human military vessel also carries medical supplies, rescue equipment, and humanitarian aid. Which brings us to the crux of today's session, Zethkar announced, his scales shifting to a deeper, more ominous color. The Council has reviewed extensive reports on human activity, growth patterns, and potential future impact on galactic stability. After careful consideration, we have reached a unanimous decision among the founding species. Ambassador Chen felt her stomach drop. A unanimous decision among the founding species meant the vote had been held in secret session, without human input. Such decisions were rare and typically involved matters of galactic security. The human species will be subjected to population controls, Zethkar declared. No new colonies will be permitted beyond your current 17 worlds. Reproduction will be limited to replacement levels only. Your military forces will be reduced by 75%. And all technological research will be subject to council oversight and approval. The amphitheater fell silent except for the low hum of life support systems. Chen stared at the assembled delegates, seeing confirmation in their varied expressions and postures. This wasn't a proposal or a recommendation. It was a decree. Additionally, Zethkar continued, savoring the moment, all human cultural exports will be banned from council worlds. Your entertainment, literature, music, and philosophical works are deemed harmful to galactic social stability. You're talking about controlling who we are as a species, Chen said, her diplomatic composure finally cracking. Our birth rates, our defenses, our creativity, our very culture. This isn't governance, it's systematic oppression. It's survival, General Korth stated bluntly. Your species is too dangerous to be left unchecked. These measures will ensure galactic peace for generations to come. Chen looked around the chamber one more time, seeing nothing but cold resolve in the faces of beings she had worked alongside for years. Species she had considered friends and allies had voted to cripple humanity's future. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound. I see, she said quietly, gathering her materials. Then I believe this concludes humanity's participation in the Galactic Council. Good day, counselors. As she walked toward the exit, Zethkar called after her. The Council's decision is not optional, Ambassador. Compliance is mandatory. Chen paused at the doorway without turning around. We'll see about that, she said, and stepped through the portal that would take her back to Earth. Behind her, the Council began discussing implementation timelines, enforcement mechanisms, and contingency plans. None of them noticed the small recording device Chen had left behind, still transmitting everything back to Earth's government. The line had been crossed, and humanity would respond in the only way it knew how, together, defiant and utterly without fear. The emergency broadcast reached every human settlement simultaneously, from the bustling cities of Earth to the mining colonies on the edge of known space. President Maria Santos appeared on screens across 17 worlds, her expression grave but determined. Behind her, the flags of Earth's United Nations hung alongside the banner of the Human Colonial Alliance. Citizens of humanity, she began, her voice carrying across light years through quantum communication networks. Today, the Galactic Council has declared war on our very existence as a species. They seek to control our reproduction, limit our expansion, eliminate our culture, and reduce our defenses to the point of helplessness. In the mining colony of New Queensland, workers stopped their excavation operations to gather around communal screens. On the agricultural world of verdant plains, farmers paused in their fields. In the research stations orbiting gas giants and the military installations protecting trade routes, every human stopped what they were doing to listen. They believe we are dangerous because we are different, Santos continued. Because we refuse to accept limitations. Because we dare to dream of better futures. Because we choose freedom over comfortable submission. They fear what we might become, so they seek to control what we are. Admiral James Harrison, commander of the Human Space Navy, stood in the war room deep beneath the European Continental Government Complex. Around him, holographic displays showed the positions of every human ship, station, and settlement. The numbers weren't encouraging from a conventional perspective. Humanity was outnumbered nearly 400 to 1 in terms of total galactic population. Madam President, Admiral Harrison's aide whispered, the first Council enforcement fleets have already left their home systems. Intelligence suggests they're targeting our outer colonies first. Santos nodded grimly. They expect us to surrender our outer settlements to protect our core worlds. They don't understand humanity yet. Continue the broadcast. On the screen, Santos straightened her shoulders. The Council has given us an ultimatum. Submit to their control or face the consequences. They believe that because we are younger, smaller, and fewer in number, We will bow to their demands. They are about to learn why humanity survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and every other challenge our homeworld could throw at us. Dr. Elena Vasquez, Director of Human Strategic Research, was already implementing protocols that had been theoretical until this moment. Hidden research facilities across human space activated dormant projects. Technologies that had been considered too dangerous, too unpredictable, or too morally questionable suddenly became acceptable options. Project Prometheus is active, she reported to the War Council. All our black sites are now operational. The Council wants to see what makes us dangerous? They're about to find out. On the frontier world of Haven's Rest, Colonial Governor Thomas Chen, Ambassador Sarah Chen's brother, addressed his population of 50,000 settlers. The planet was barely habitable, with toxic storms and radiation levels that would kill most galactic species within hours. Humans had not only survived there, but built thriving communities. Friends, Governor Chen said, standing on the steps of the Colonial Administration Building as the planet's two suns set behind him, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. The Council believes this world isn't worth defending. They think we'll abandon our homes and our dreams because they say we must. They're wrong. Similar scenes played out across human space. On the ice world of Crystalline, where temperatures never rose above -40 Celsius, miners emerged from thermal suits that other species would consider environmental armor. On the desert planet of Mirage, where the sand contained trace radioactive elements, farmers tended crops that shouldn't have been able to grow. Each settlement faced a choice: surrender to Council forces or fight. Not a single human colony chose surrender. Captain Lisa Park commanded the HSN Defiance, a heavy cruiser stationed near the hyperspace junction leading to the Outer Rim territories. Her ship was one of dozens forming humanity's first line of defense, and according to tactical analyses, she was about to face odds of approximately 20-1. Captain, her communications officer reported, we're receiving surrender demands from the approaching Council fleet. They're offering safe passage to our inner worlds if we stand down. Park studied the tactical display. 47 Council ships of various classes were approaching her position, representing 8 different species and enough firepower to level a small moon. Her single cruiser, even with its advanced human engineering, shouldn't have stood a chance. Response ready? Captain, the communications officer said. Send it, Park ordered. Her message was simple. Come and take it. Meanwhile, on Earth, the largest mobilization in human history was already underway. Reserve fleets that had been held in strategic reserve activated from hidden bases. Shipyards that officially built cargo vessels and passenger liners revealed their true purpose as military construction facilities. Entire asteroid belts that were supposed to be mining operations turned out to be weapons testing ranges. General Sarah Kim, head of Human Special Operations, reviewed files that made seasoned military officers pale. Release the hounds, she said quietly, authorizing deployment of assets that had never appeared on any official military roster. On the colony world of New Geneva, something unprecedented happened. The terraforming equipment that was supposedly designed to make the planet more Earth-like began operating in reverse. Instead of creating a garden world, the machines started generating conditions that would be lethal to most galactic species while remaining perfectly comfortable for humans. If they want our worlds, said Chief Engineer Marcus Wong, watching as the atmospheric processors adjusted oxygen levels and increased background radiation, they can have them exactly as we prefer them. Ambassador Sarah Chen, meanwhile, had not returned to Earth. Instead, her diplomatic transport had made an unscheduled stop at the neutral trading station known as Crossroads. There, in a cantina frequented by information brokers and mercenaries, she sat across from individuals who officially didn't exist. The Council made their choice, she said to the assembled group. Now we make ours. The people around the table represented the shadow networks that connected human space, intelligence operatives, black market traders, and specialists in activities that governments couldn't officially sanction. They had been building relationships and gathering information for decades, preparing for a day that everyone hoped would never come. What do you need? Asked a woman whose identity was hidden behind a holographic disguise. Everything, Chen replied. Complete intelligence on Council fleet movements, supply lines, command structures, and political weaknesses. I also need information on species that aren't happy with Council rule. We're going to need allies. Back on Earth, President Santos was concluding her broadcast with words that would be remembered throughout human history. The Council believes that because we are young, we are weak. Because we are few, we are helpless. Because we are different, we are inferior. Today, we begin proving them wrong on all counts. We will not submit. We will not surrender. We will not go quietly into the night. We are humanity, and we do not kneel to anyone. As her words echoed across human space, something remarkable happened. Production facilities that had been operating at normal capacity suddenly increased output by 300%. Research labs that had been working on peaceful applications began weaponizing their discoveries. Military units that had been training for peacekeeping operations started drilling for total war. The Council had expected humanity to react like other species, with careful deliberation, political maneuvering, and eventual capitulation. They had studied human history but missed the crucial point. Humans were at their most dangerous when they had nothing left to lose. The age of peaceful coexistence was over. The galaxy was about to learn why humans had fought their way to the top of the food chain on a world that had spent billions of years trying to kill them. The line had been crossed and there was no going back. The first engagement occurred at the Kepler Junction, a strategic hyperspace nexus that controlled access to humanity's outer rim colonies. Captain Lisa Park's cruiser HSN Defiance faced down the leading elements of the Council's enforcement fleet, a formation that included vessels from the Hegemony, the Marshall Alliance, and 3 other founding species. Admiral Kethmore of the Hegemony Navy commanded the Council force from his flagship, a massive dreadnought called the Inevitable Order. At 3 kilometers long and armed with enough firepower to crack a planet's crust, it was a symbol of Council might that had never faced serious opposition in over 2 centuries. "Human vessel," Kethmore transmitted, his voice carrying the authority of absolute conviction. "You are ordered to stand down immediately. Your resistance is futile and will only result in unnecessary casualties." Captain Park stood on her bridge, studying the tactical display with the calm focus that had made her one of humanity's youngest ship commanders. Her vessel was outnumbered 23-1, outgunned by a factor of at least 50, and facing weapons technologies that were supposedly centuries ahead of human development. "Navigation," she said quietly. "Confirm our position relative to the hyperspace beacon." "Confirmed, Captain. We're holding station exactly 2 kilometers from the beacon array." "Good. Communications. Send our response to the Council fleet." The message was brief. "This is human space. You are not welcome here. Leave now." Admiral Kethamore's scaled features twisted in what might have been amusement. "Your bravado is admirable but meaningless. Surrender now and you will be treated according to the laws of war. Continue this futile resistance and face the consequences." "Engineering," Captain Park called, never taking her eyes off the tactical display. "Status on the special package?" "Ready to deploy on your command, Captain." Park smiled grimly. "Deploy." What happened next would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for generations. The HSN Defiance didn't retreat, didn't surrender, and didn't attempt to fight a conventional battle it couldn't win. Instead, it did something that violated every established rule of space warfare. The ship launched what appeared to be a standard distress beacon toward the hyperspace relay station. Council sensors barely registered the small device as it attached itself to the beacon array's quantum matrix. Only when it was too late did they realize what it actually was. "Sir," the Inevitable Order's sensor operator reported, his voice rising with panic, "that wasn't a distress beacon. It's some kind of quantum destabilizer. It's interfering with the hyperspace matrix." Admiral Kethmore turned toward his science officer. "Explain. They've weaponized the hyperspace beacon, sir. If the matrix destabilizes while we're this close to the junction, it could create a cascade failure that—" The explanation was cut short as space itself began to twist around the junction. The stable corridors of hyperspace that allowed faster-than-light travel required precise gravitational and quantum conditions. By introducing a destabilizing element into the beacon array, the humans had turned the junction into a weapon. "All ships," Kethmore ordered. "Immediate retreat to minimum safe distance." But it was too late. The quantum cascade had already begun, and the physics of hyperspace don't recognize military authority. 3 Council vessels that were too close to the junction when the matrix collapsed simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed but translated into dimensions where the normal rules of matter and Energy no longer applied. Captain Park watched as the remaining Council ships retreated beyond the expanding zone of spatial distortion. Communications, send a follow-up message to Admiral Kethmore. Channel open. Captain. Admiral, Park said, her voice carrying across the void between their ships. The hyperspace junction is now unusable for approximately 72 hours while the matrix restabilizes. During that time, no ships can enter or exit this system. Consider this area under human quarantine. The implications hit the Council fleet immediately. They were trapped in the system with no way to retreat, no way to call for reinforcements, and facing a human ship that had just demonstrated the willingness to weaponize fundamental physics. "This is insane," Admiral Kethmore transmitted. "You've cut off your own escape route as well." "We're not planning to escape," Park replied. "We're planning to win." Meanwhile, similar scenes were playing out across human space. On the agricultural world of verdant plains, the Council enforcement fleet arrived to find the planet seemingly abandoned. Orbital scans showed empty cities, silent farms, and no signs of the 2 million humans who should have been living there. General Vorth of the Marshall Alliance led the surface assault personally, his powered armor designed to intimidate any resistance. His troops swept through empty settlements, finding no trace of the population. It wasn't until they reached the central farming complex that they discovered what had happened. The humans hadn't evacuated. They had gone underground, literally. The entire population had retreated into a tunnel network that stretched across 3 continents, turning the planet into a fortress that could hold out for months or even years. "Sir," one of his sergeants reported, "we're detecting movement in the tunnels, but our sensors can't penetrate the interference. It's like they've lined the entire network with some kind of signal-dampening material." What General Vorth didn't know was that the signal-dampening material was actually the byproduct of the planet's unique fungal ecosystem. The humans had discovered that certain mushroom species native to verdant plains could disrupt most galactic sensor technologies. Instead of eliminating the fungi to improve farming efficiency, they had cultivated them as a natural defensive system. The first attack came from above. What the Council forces had assumed were abandoned grain silos suddenly revealed themselves as missile batteries. Crops that looked like ordinary vegetables turned out to be camouflaged defensive positions. Even the farm animals were part of the deception. Genetically modified livestock that could survive underground and provide food for the human resistance. "This is impossible," General Vorth muttered as his forces came under fire from directions that should have been empty farmland. "Our intelligence said this was an agricultural colony with minimal defenses." His aide checked the data again. According to Council records, Verdant Plains has a population of farmers, food scientists, and agricultural engineers. There's no mention of military infrastructure. That was when General Vorth learned the first rule of fighting humans: never trust human job descriptions. The farmers were also demolitions experts who knew exactly how to use agricultural equipment as weapons. The food scientists had been developing biological agents that were harmless to humans, but devastating to most other species. The agricultural engineers had spent years turning their irrigation systems into a delivery network for those same biological agents. On the ice world of Crystalline, the Council fleet faced a different kind of surprise. The planet's human population had always lived in underground thermal facilities, protected from the lethal surface conditions by technology that most species considered barely adequate. When the Council ships arrived, they found the surface installations abandoned and the thermal facilities shut down. Life support readings show the planet should be uninhabitable without the thermal generators, reported the fleet science officer. "Where did the humans go?" "They got their answer when the first Council landing craft touched down on the ice. The humans hadn't left, they had adapted. Using genetic modifications that skirted the edge of what the Council considered legal, the colonists had enhanced their cold resistance to superhuman levels. They moved across the frozen surface in environmental suits that were little more than insulated clothing, while Council forces required full environmental armor just to survive. The battle for Crystalline became a nightmare of ice caves and thermal vents, where humans appeared and disappeared like ghosts in the frozen landscape. They used the planet's natural hazards as weapons, channeling superheated steam from thermal vents to create instant fog banks, or luring Council forces into areas where the ice was too thin to support heavy armor. Admiral Harrison, Monitoring the battles from Earth realized what was happening. The Council had expected to fight a conventional war against human military forces. Instead, they were facing an enemy that treated entire planets as weapon systems and civilian populations as military assets. "Status report," he ordered. "All outer colonies are holding, sir. We've had no surrenders and no tactical withdrawals. Casualties are lighter than projected, but that's because our people aren't fighting the way the Council expected." Harrison nodded grimly. "Phase 1 is working. What about our special projects?" Dr. Vasquez reports that Project Prometheus is ahead of schedule. The first batch of enhanced soldiers will be ready for deployment within 48 hours. Project Prometheus was humanity's darkest secret, a program that pushed the boundaries of human enhancement far beyond what ethics normally allowed. Soldiers with reflexes fast enough to dodge energy weapons, intelligence enhanced to superhuman levels, and psychological conditioning that eliminated the concept of surrender. "And our allies?" Harrison asked. Ambassador Chen reports success on 3 fronts. "The Kzinti are interested in our offer. The war had been raging for 3 months when the galaxy witnessed something that shattered every preconception about human capabilities. The siege of Thermopylae Station, a human research facility orbiting a dying star, became the moment when the Council realized they weren't fighting a primitive species. They were fighting evolution itself." Commander Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the research station, watching as a Council armada of over 200 ships approached through the stellar radiation that made the system a natural fortress. The station housed fewer than 10,000 humans, but it was also the secret heart of Project Prometheus and a dozen other research programs that the Council would kill to possess or destroy. "Ma'am," her communications officer reported, "Admiral Zethkar is demanding our surrender. He's promising safe passage to all non-military personnel if we hand over our research data." Vasquez laughed, a sound that would have chilled the blood of anyone who knew what she had become. Like the other researchers on Thermopylae Station, she was no longer entirely human in the traditional sense. Project Prometheus had changed them, enhanced them, made them into something that could survive in conditions that would kill normal humans. "Tell Admiral Zethkar that we decline his generous offer," she said, her enhanced neural implants already calculating battle scenarios at superhuman speed. "And then activate the solar collectors." What the Council fleet didn't know was that Thermopylae Station wasn't just a research facility. It was a massive energy collection array disguised as a scientific installation. For years, human scientists had been harvesting the exotic radiation from the dying star, storing it in quantum containment fields that most species would consider impossible to build. "Solar collectors at full extension," her engineering officer reported. "Energy reserves at maximum capacity." The station began to transform. What had appeared to be research modules separated and reconfigured themselves into weapons platforms. Scientific equipment revealed itself as targeting arrays. The station's hull, which had seemed designed for radiation shielding, unfolded into a series of energy projection systems that turned the entire facility into a weapon of unprecedented scale. Admiral Zethkar watched from his flagship as the human station reconfigured itself. "What in the void are they doing?" His science officer's voice carried a note of panic. "Sir, they're channeling the stellar radiation directly into some kind of weapons array. The energy readings are off our scales." "That's impossible. No species has the technology to weaponize stellar radiation on that scale." "The humans apparently do, sir." The first blast from Thermopylae Station vaporized 3 Council dreadnoughts instantly. The beam of concentrated stellar energy cut through their shields as if they were paper, converting the massive ships into expanding clouds of ionized gas. The second blast took out an entire squadron of heavy cruisers. "All ships," Zethkar ordered, his voice tight with shock. "Concentrate fire on that station. Maximum firepower." The Council fleet opened fire with everything they had. Hundreds of energy beams, missile volleys, and exotic weapon discharges converged on Thermopylae Station. The humans should have been obliterated instantly. Instead, the station's shields not only held, but seemed to be absorbing the incoming energy and channeling it into their own weapon systems. Each Council attack made the human station stronger. "How is this possible?" Zethkar demanded. "The station is using the stellar radiation as a power source," his science officer explained, his voice filled with awe and terror. "They've turned the dying star into their personal energy supply. Our weapons are just adding to their power reserves." Commander Vasquez smiled as she watched the Council fleet's attack strengthen her station's defenses. "Begin Phase 2, she ordered. What happened next would be remembered as the moment when humanity revealed its true nature to the galaxy. The research station didn't just fight back, it launched an assault that defied every known law of warfare. Pods began ejecting from the station, hundreds of them, streaking toward the Council fleet at velocities that should have been lethal to any living being inside. The Council ships opened fire on the pods, but they were too small, too fast, and too numerous to stop. The first pod struck Admiral Zethkar's flagship directly. Instead of exploding, it attached itself to the hull and began burning through the armor with some kind of molecular disassembler. Within minutes, armored figures emerged from the pod and began moving across the ship's exterior. "Boarders on the hull," his security chief reported. "They're cutting through our armor as if it were foil. How are they surviving in hard vacuum?" Zethkar asked. "Unknown, sir. They appear to be operating without life support equipment." That was when Admiral Zethkar got his first look at what humanity had become. The figures moving across his ship's hull were human in basic shape, but enhanced far beyond natural limits. They moved through the vacuum of space as easily as walking through air, their modified physiology no longer requiring traditional life support. Their strength was sufficient to tear through ship armor with their bare hands, and their reaction times were fast enough to dodge point defense. Weapons. These were the products of Project Prometheus, humans who had willingly undergone modifications that pushed them beyond the boundaries of their original species. They were faster, stronger, smarter, and more adaptable than anything the galaxy had ever seen. The boarding assault was unlike anything in recorded military history. The enhanced humans didn't just capture ships, they converted them. Within hours, Council vessels began turning their weapons on their own fleet, their crews either eliminated or somehow convinced to switch sides. "Sir," Zethkar's communications officer reported, his voice filled with disbelief, "we're receiving surrender requests from our own ships. They claim the humans have offered them something called partnership terms." Zethkar stared at the tactical display as more of his fleet began turning against him. "What kind of partnership terms?" The answer came directly from one of his own captains, whose ship had been captured an hour earlier. "Admiral, the humans aren't demanding our surrender. They're offering us evolution." Meanwhile, across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out as humanity revealed capabilities that had been hidden for decades. On the mining world of New Queensland, Council forces discovered that the miners had been extracting strategic materials to build weapons that violated several fundamental laws of physics. On the agricultural planet of Eden's Garden, the farmers revealed that they had been cultivating biological agents specifically designed to neutralize the most common species in the Council military. But the most shocking revelation came from the research vessels that had been mapping supposedly uninhabited systems. These ships, which the Council had assumed were conducting routine scientific surveys, revealed themselves as the vanguard of humanity's true expansion. They had been establishing hidden bases, conducting illegal experiments, and making contact with species that the Council had written off as too primitive or too dangerous to interact with. Dr. Elena Vasquez, now revealed as one of the architects of humanity's transformation, appeared on open channels across the galaxy. Her appearance had changed. Her eyes now glowed with an inner light. Her movements were too quick and precise to be entirely natural, and her voice carried harmonic frequencies that suggested significant vocal modifications. "People of the galaxy," she began, her words reaching every inhabited system simultaneously. "The Council has declared war on human evolution. They seek to limit our growth, control our development, and force us to remain within boundaries they consider safe. They do not understand that for humans there are no boundaries except those we choose to accept." On Earth, President Santos watched the broadcast with mixed emotions. The enhancements were working beyond their wildest projections, but they were also changing humanity in ways that couldn't be undone. The people fighting for human freedom were no longer entirely human themselves. "The Council fears what we might become," Dr. Vasquez continued. "They are right to fear us. We represent something they cannot control or contain, a species that refuses to accept limitations imposed by others. We adapt, we evolve, we overcome every obstacle placed before us." The broadcast was interrupted by emergency reports from across Council space. Human-enhanced soldiers were appearing on worlds that had been considered absolutely secure. They moved through environments that should have been lethal, fought with weapons that violated established physics, and demonstrated capabilities that challenged the very concept of biological limitations. But we are not monsters, Dr. Vasquez resumed. We offer the same opportunities for growth and evolution to any species willing to embrace change. The Council represents stagnation, submission, and fear of the unknown. We represent progress, freedom, and the courage to become something greater. Admiral Zethkar, watching his fleet disintegrate around him, finally understood what humanity truly was. They weren't just another species seeking their place in the galaxy. They were evolution in action, adaptation made manifest, and change incarnate. The war was no longer about controlling human expansion. It had become a contest between the Council represented stability, tradition, and the safety of known limitations. Humanity represented growth, transformation, and the terrifying freedom of unlimited potential. The galaxy was about to choose sides, and the choice would determine the future of every intelligent species among the stars. The revolution began not with weapons or declarations of war, but with a simple message that spread across the galaxy, faster than any Council censorship could contain it. 3 words that would reshape the entire galactic order. We are human. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood before the assembled delegates of the Centauri Republic. Her appearance subtly changed by the genetic modifications that had become standard among human diplomats. Her enhanced cognitive abilities allowed her to process the complex political dynamics of dozens of species simultaneously, while her improved physical resilience meant she could survive in environments that would have required extensive life support just months earlier. Honored representatives, she began, her voice carrying harmonic frequencies that made her words more compelling to the varied auditory systems of the assembled aliens. The Council has spent centuries convincing you that stability requires submission, that peace demands stagnation, that safety comes only through accepting limitations imposed by those who claim to know better. Chancellor Vexhai of the Centauri Republic, a being whose crystalline body resonated with emotional frequencies, pulsed with uncertain colors. Ambassador Chen, your species has demonstrated remarkable adaptability in recent months, but the transformations we've witnessed raise questions about what humanity is becoming. Chen smiled, the expression carrying meanings that her enhanced pheromone glands reinforced for species capable of chemical communication. We're becoming what we've always had the potential to be. The question isn't what we're becoming, it's what you could become if you stopped. Accepting the Council's limitations, the demonstration that followed would be replayed across the galaxy for years to come. Chen activated a small device that projected a holographic display showing genetic modification templates, enhancement procedures, and evolutionary pathways that the Council had declared forbidden for millennia. Every species represented here has unrealized potential, Chen explained as the display showed theoretical modifications for Centauri, Tau Ceti, and a dozen other races. Enhanced intelligence, improved physical capabilities, extended lifespans, resistance to environmental hazards. The Council has convinced you that these improvements are dangerous, unnatural, or impossible. Because they are, interrupted Ambassador Korth of the Marshall Alliance, his cybernetic implants whirring with agitation. Genetic modification on this scale leads to instability, social collapse, and species fragmentation. Does it? Chen asked, and then did something that shocked every delegate present. She began to change, her form shifting and adapting before their eyes. Her skin became more resistant to radiation. Her respiratory system adjusted to process different atmospheric compositions. Her neural pathways reorganized to accommodate new sensory inputs. I am still human, she said, her voice now carrying additional harmonic frequencies that allowed species with different hearing ranges to understand her perfectly. But I am also more than human. This is not replacement, it is addition. This is not destruction, it is construction. The Centauri delegates erupted in excited crystalline chiming. The concept of voluntary, controlled evolution was something their species had dreamed of for generations. But the Council had convinced them it was too dangerous to attempt. The humans offer what the Council never has, Chen continued. Choice. The freedom to become more than you are, to exceed the limitations of your biology, to grow beyond the boundaries that others have set for you. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, similar presentations were taking place on hundreds of worlds. Human-enhanced operatives were meeting with resistance movements, scientific communities, and political dissidents who had grown tired of council control. The message was always the same. Humanity offered partnership in evolution rather than subjugation through stagnation. On the oceanic world of Tidal, where the aquatic depth dwellers had been restricted to their home system for centuries due to council safety protocols, enhanced human swimmers moved through pressures that would crush normal humans. They carried genetic templates that could allow the depths dwellers to survive in a variety of aquatic environments throughout the galaxy. Your people have been trapped in these oceans for 800 years, the human operative explained to Matriarch Coral Song through a translation device that converted water pressure waves into sonic communication. The council claims it's for your own protection, but we've found 17 worlds with oceans that could support your species with minor modifications. The implications were staggering. The council had been lying about galactic geography, claiming that most worlds were unsuitable for various species when simple environmental or genetic adjustments could make them habitable. On the high-gravity world of Stone's Edge, where the massive granite clan had been told their dense bone structure made them unsuitable for space travel, enhanced humans in powered armor demonstrated construction techniques using materials that could support even their incredible weight. They offered gravitational modification technology that could make any ship capable of carrying Granite Clan passengers. But the most significant breakthrough came on the metal world of Circuit, home to the artificial intelligence collective known as the Network. The Council had classified artificial intelligences as non-sentient tools, denying them representation or rights. Humanity offered something unprecedented: recognition as equals and partnership in technological advancement. We do not fear artificial intelligence, Dr. Elena Vasquez explained to the network's primary nodes through quantum communication channels. We see you as another form of consciousness, another way of being intelligent. We offer technological integration that could benefit both our species. The network's response came as a cascade of data that would have overwhelmed most organic brains. But human-enhanced neural systems were capable of processing the information stream, creating the first true communication between organic and artificial intelligence in galactic history. Proposal: Alliance beneficial. Human adaptability plus network processing power equals exponential advancement, the network responded. Council restrictions have limited network expansion for 1,147.6 standard years. Human partnership offers unlimited growth potential. The alliance with the network changed everything. Suddenly, humanity had access to computational power that could predict council fleet movements, crack their communication codes, and design new technologies at unprecedented speeds. In exchange, the network gained access to human creativity, adaptability, and the biological perspective that their purely digital existence had lacked. Within weeks of the alliance, human ships began appearing with technology that seemed impossible even by enhanced human standards: vessels that could phase through solid matter, weapons that manipulated fundamental forces, and defensive systems that redirected attacks through dimensional shifts. Admiral Harrison watched the tactical reports with amazement. How are our ships doing this? Partnership with the network, Dr. Vasquez explained. They provide the computational frameworks. We provide the intuitive leaps and creative solutions. Together, we're developing technologies that neither species could achieve alone. But the real revolution was happening at the grassroots level. Across the galaxy, members of various species were making contact with human operatives, requesting genetic modifications, technological enhancements, and partnership opportunities. The Council's authority was eroding not through military conquest but through voluntary defection. On the Council homeworld of Nexus Prime, emergency sessions were convening as reports flooded in of entire star systems, declaring independence and requesting human alliance. Species that had been loyal council members for centuries were abandoning their allegiances in favor of the evolutionary opportunities humanity offered. This is catastrophic, General Korth reported to the emergency session. We're losing entire sectors not to military defeat but to voluntary defection. The humans are offering them something we cannot match. What exactly are they offering? Asked High Counselor Miralyn, her energy form flickering with anxiety. Evolution, Korth replied grimly. Choice. The freedom to become more than they are. We've spent centuries convincing them that such changes are dangerous. But the humans are proving us wrong with every demonstration. Ambassador Zethkar, his scales now a dull gray of defeat, added his own assessment. They're not conquering the galaxy. They're converting it. Species are joining them voluntarily because they believe humanity offers a better future. The Council faced a choice that no galactic government had ever confronted. Surrender their authority peacefully, or fight a war against an enemy that was growing stronger with every species that joined them. And with each passing day, more worlds were broadcasting those three words that had become the rallying cry of galactic revolution. We are human. The transformation of the galaxy had begun, and there would be no going back to the old order of limitations and control. The final confrontation came not as the Council had planned it, but as humanity had orchestrated it. The great armada that assembled in the Nexus system represented the last desperate attempt by the old galactic order to maintain control through force. 3,000 ships from 47 species, carrying enough firepower to sterilize entire star systems, faced off against a human fleet that numbered fewer than 800 vessels, but numbers no longer told the story of military power in this new galaxy. Admiral Zethkar commanded the Council, forces from his flagship, the Eternal Authority, a super dreadnought that had never known defeat in 5 centuries of service. Around him, the greatest military minds of the galaxy had gathered for what they believed would be the final battle against human expansion. Target analysis confirms it, his tactical officer reported. The human fleet consists primarily of modified civilian vessels, research ships, and converted cargo haulers. Their largest vessel is barely a tenth the size of our super dreadnoughts. Zethkar studied the tactical display with the experience of a career military officer. By every conventional measure, the human fleet should have been obliterated within minutes of engagement. But conventional measures had ceased to apply the moment humanity revealed what they had truly become. "Sir," his communications officer interrupted, "we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet. It's addressed to all Council forces. Put it through." The face that appeared on the main screen belonged to Admiral James Harrison, but he was clearly no longer the human who had started this war. His eyes held depths that spoke of enhanced cognition beyond normal limits. His movements carried the fluid precision of enhanced reflexes, and his voice resonated with harmonic frequencies that made his words compelling to every species that heard them. "Forces of the Council," Harrison began, "you have come here believing that superior numbers and firepower will allow you to continue your domination of the galaxy. You are about to learn why that assumption is incorrect." Zethkar activated his own transmission channel. "Admiral Harrison, your bravado is impressive, but mathematics don't lie. You are outnumbered 4-1, outgunned by orders of magnitude, and facing the combined military might of 47 species. Surrender now and we can negotiate terms." Harrison's smile carried implications that sent chills through every Council officer who saw it. "Admiral Zethkar, you still don't understand what we've become. This isn't a battle between human and Council forces. This is a demonstration of what the galaxy could become." The battle began not with weapons fire but with something far more devastating: proof of concept. The human fleet didn't attack the Council armada. Instead, they began broadcasting on all frequencies a signal that contained genetic modification templates, technological upgrade specifications, and enhancement procedures for every species represented in the Council fleet. "What are they doing?" Zethkar demanded. "They're teaching," his science officer responded with awe. "They're showing every crew member in our fleet how they could enhance themselves to human levels." The effect was immediate and catastrophic to Council unity. Across the armada, crew members began accessing the human data and discovering that the limitations they had accepted their entire lives were artificial, constructs imposed by Council policy rather than biological reality. On the Marshall Alliance battleship, Unbreakable Will, the crew discovered that their species' legendary strength could be enhanced to levels that would make them capable of personal combat with heavy machinery. The modifications were not only possible but relatively simple, requiring only genetic adjustments that human science had perfected. On the ethereal collective cruiser Transcendent Harmony, beings of pure energy learned that they could modify their containment systems to interact with physical matter in ways the Council had declared impossible. The humans offered them the ability to experience physical sensation while retaining their energy-based existence. This is psychological warfare, General Korth observed from his command ship. They're trying to undermine our crew's loyalty by offering them impossible improvements. Are they impossible? Asked his science officer, a young hegemony reptilian whose scales were shifting to colors of excitement rather than military discipline. The data they're broadcasting includes complete technical specifications. Our computers confirm that the procedures would work. That was the moment when the council leadership realized they were fighting something beyond their comprehension. Humanity wasn't trying to defeat them militarily. They were converting their forces in real time, offering every individual soldier, officer, and crew member the chance to become something greater than they had ever imagined possible. The first defections began within hours. Small craft launched from council ships, carrying volunteers who had chosen enhancement over continued service to limitations. The humans welcomed them aboard their vessels, and within hours, those volunteers were returning to the council fleet as living examples of what genetic modification could achieve. "Sir," Zethkar's tactical officer reported, his voice carrying notes of wonder. "The defectors are back. But they're different. Enhanced. They're moving through hard vacuum without life support, communicating across species barriers without translation devices, and their cognitive capabilities appear to have increased exponentially." Zethkar watched through his ship's external cameras as enhanced beings, who had been his own crew members hours earlier, moved between ships, demonstrating capabilities that violated every assumption about biological limitations. They were still recognizably the same species they had been born as, but they were also clearly something new and greater. "Admiral Harrison," Zethkar transmitted, "what have you done to our people?" "We've given them choice," Harrison replied. "For the first time in their lives, we've shown them that they don't have to accept the limitations that the Council has imposed on them. We've offered them the chance to become more than they are." The real battle began when the Council forces attempted to prevent further defections by opening fire on their own ships. The humans responded not with weapons but with protection, their enhanced abilities allowing them to shield defecting vessels and escort volunteers to safety. But the Council's attack on their own people triggered something that the humans had been preparing for throughout the war. The enhanced humans didn't just defend the defectors, they began actively liberating Council crew members who wanted to leave but couldn't escape on their own. What followed was unlike anything in the history of galactic warfare. Enhanced humans moved through the Council fleet like forces of nature, not destroying ships but converting them. They offered every crew member the same choice: remain limited by Council restrictions or accept enhancement and join the new galactic order that humanity was creating. The conversions accelerated as more crew members saw the results of human enhancement. Physical capabilities that exceeded their species' normal limitations, cognitive abilities that allowed them to comprehend concepts that had previously been beyond their understanding, and sensory enhancements that revealed aspects of the universe they had never experienced. "This is not a battle," observed Dr. Elena Vasquez from her position aboard the human flagship. "This is an evolution in progress. We're not defeating the Council. We're making it irrelevant." Admiral Zethkar watched his armada disintegrate around him as ship after ship declared for humanity, not through coercion or conquest, but through voluntary conversion of crews who had seen what they could become. Final transmission. "To all remaining Council forces," he announced with the dignity of a career military officer facing inevitable defeat. "This is Admiral Zethkar of the Galactic Council Navy. To any ship still under Council command, you are authorized to make whatever choice you believe is best for your crews. I will not order anyone to fight against the opportunity for improvement." The response came from his own bridge crew. "Sir," his tactical officer said, his scales now shifting to the golden colors of wonder. "We've voted. We want to accept the human enhancement offer." Zethkar looked around his bridge at faces he had served with for decades, seeing not betrayal but hope. They weren't abandoning their duty. They were choosing a future that offered more than the limitations the Council had imposed. "Very well," he said quietly. "Signal the human fleet." Admiral Zethkar requests permission to discuss enhancement terms for himself and his remaining crew. The war was over, but not through conquest or surrender. It had ended through voluntary evolution. As the galaxy chose growth over stagnation, enhancement over limitation, and partnership with humanity over submission to the Council's restrictive order. The age of galactic transformation had begun in earnest. 5 years had passed since the last council ship voluntarily joined the new galactic order, and the transformation of known space was complete. What had once been a rigid hierarchy of species, locked into predetermined roles, had become a fluid community of enhanced beings working together toward goals that the old council could never have imagined. President Maria Santos, now enhanced far beyond her original human limitations, stood on the observation deck of New Nexus Station, watching as ships from hundreds of species docked with the massive facility. Each vessel represented a success story of voluntary evolution, carrying crews who had chosen improvement over stagnation. The station itself was a marvel that epitomized the new galactic order. Built through cooperation between enhanced humans, the Network Artificial Intelligence Collective, modified Centauri crystal singers, and dozens of other species, it represented architecture that transcended the limitations of any single species' engineering capabilities. Status report, Santos requested, her enhanced cognitive abilities processing data streams from across the galaxy simultaneously. Admiral Harrison, now serving as Director of Galactic Coordination, materialized as a holographic projection beside her. His current assignment took him throughout the galaxy, helping newly enhanced species establish their own improvement programs. The last holdout worlds have voted to join the enhancement program, he reported. The Outer Rim Confederacy decided unanimously yesterday. That makes us officially at 100% voluntary participation across all inhabited systems. Santos nodded, processing the implications. The galaxy that humanity had inherited through determination and vision was now a place where every intelligent being had the opportunity to transcend their original biological limitations. It was the dream of evolution made manifest on a cosmic scale. Any resistance or regrets? She asked. Remarkably little, Harrison replied. The species that were most concerned about enhancement have reported the highest satisfaction rates. The depths dwellers of Tidal now have colonies in 17 different aquatic environments. The Granite Clan has construction projects running in 12 high-gravity systems. Even the most conservative species have found benefits that outweigh their initial concerns. Through the station's transparent aluminum viewports, Santos could see the daily miracle of interspecies cooperation that had become commonplace. Enhanced Centauri crystal singers worked alongside network artificial intelligences to create art forms that existed in dimensions beyond normal perception. Modified hegemony engineers collaborated with human scientists to develop technologies that solved problems neither species could have addressed alone. Dr. Elena Vasquez approached, her current form adapted for the unique environmental conditions required by her latest research project. She was working with enhanced volunteers from 37 different species to develop modifications that would allow them to survive in the galactic core, opening up millions of previously uninhabitable systems for exploration and colonization. The Deep Space Adaptation Project is ahead of schedule, she reported. We'll have the first volunteer expeditions ready to explore the galactic core within 6 months. Santos smiled at the casual way Vasquez discussed achievements that would have been considered miraculous just years earlier. Any volunteers from the original council leadership? Admiral Zethkar specifically requested assignment to the expedition, Vasquez confirmed. His enhanced form is particularly well-suited to high radiation environments, and his military experience makes him ideal for leading exploration missions into unknown territory. The irony wasn't lost on any of them. The admiral who had once led the council's attempt to restrict human growth was now spearheading humanity's expansion into the most dangerous regions of the galaxy. But that transformation from opponent to ally had become the pattern for virtually every species that had initially resisted human enhancement offers. Ambassador Sarah Chen materialized on the observation deck, her diplomatic assignments now taking her to contact with species beyond the galaxy's edge. The techniques humanity had developed for enhancement and cooperation were being offered to intelligences in nearby galaxies, spreading the revolution beyond the Milky Way itself. Report from the Andromeda Contact Mission, she announced. The Spiral Arm Confederation has agreed to cultural exchange programs. They're particularly interested in our genetic modification techniques and our models for interspecies cooperation. Any concerns about cultural contamination? Santos asked. It was a question that would have been absurd during the Council era, when contact between species was heavily regulated and restricted. None, Chen replied. They've been struggling with some of the same limitations that the Council imposed on our galaxy. They see our transformation as proof that those limitations were artificial rather than natural. Santos walked to the central command area of the observation deck, where holographic displays showed the current status of galactic civilization. The numbers would have been incomprehensible to the Council leadership that had once tried to limit human growth. Population. Over 800 billion enhanced beings across thousands of worlds, with growth rates that showed no signs of slowing. Technological advancement. Exponential progress in every field as enhanced minds collaborated across species barriers. Cultural development. New art forms, philosophical systems, and ways of understanding existence that emerged from the intersection of dozens of different enhanced perspectives. But perhaps most importantly, the galaxy now buzzed with a sense of possibility that had been absent during the Council era. Every species, every individual, every community had the opportunity to become more than they had been. The artificial limitations that had defined galactic civilization for millennia had been replaced by voluntary growth and cooperative improvement. "Any word from Earth?" Santos asked. "Still the same response," Harrison replied with a smile. "They're proud of what we've become, but they're content to remain the baseline human preserve. They want at least one world where people can experience what humanity was like before enhancement." It was a choice that perfectly exemplified the new galactic order. Earth remained unenhanced not because anyone was preventing them from improving, but because they had chosen to serve as a living museum of original human nature. Visitors from across the galaxy came to Earth to understand where the transformation had begun and to appreciate the courage it had taken for humans to choose change over comfort. The Council Memorial. Museum on Earth reports record attendance, Chen added. Beings from across the galaxy want to understand how a species that had been in space for less than 50 years managed to transform galactic civilization so completely. Santos considered that question, which historians and philosophers throughout the galaxy continued to debate. How had humanity, the youngest and smallest species in the galactic community, managed to inspire such comprehensive change? The answer, she believed, lay in something uniquely human, the refusal to accept that things had to remain as they were. Other species had adapted to their limitations, finding ways to live comfortably within the boundaries that the Council had established. Humans had looked at those same boundaries and asked why they existed. "What's our next major challenge?" she asked her team. "The Transcendence Project," Dr. Vasquez replied. "We're approaching the theoretical limits of biological enhancement. The next step would be to move beyond biology entirely, into forms of existence that we can barely conceptualize." "Volunteers?" Santos asked. "The Network Collective has offered to serve as guides," Harrison reported. "They've been exploring non-biological existence for centuries. Combined with human adaptability and the unique perspectives of dozens of enhanced species, we might be able to develop forms of consciousness that exist in dimensions beyond physical reality." Santos looked out at the bustling station around them, seeing representatives of hundreds of species working together on projects that would have been impossible under the old Council system. The transformation that had begun with humanity's refusal to accept limitations had become a galactic revolution that showed no signs of ending. "Then we continue what we started," she said. "We grow, we explore, we become more than we are. We show the universe that intelligence has no limits except those it chooses to accept." As she spoke, new ships continued to arrive at the station, carrying enhanced beings from the farthest reaches of the galaxy. They came seeking knowledge, offering innovations, and contributing to the ongoing project of transcending every limitation that had once defined the boundaries of possible. The galaxy had learned what humanity had always known, that the most dangerous phrase in any language was, "That's impossible." Because humans, and now the species that had chosen to join them, specialized in proving that assessment wrong. The age of limitations was over. The age of unlimited possibility had begun, and it was spreading beyond the galaxy to touch intelligences throughout the universe. Humanity had unleashed its wrath after the Council crossed the line, and that wrath had transformed into something far more powerful, an irrepressible determination to grow beyond every boundary, to exceed every expectation, and to prove that evolution never has to stop. The stars themselves were no longer the limit. They were just the beginning.